Hi, my name is Gerard Deshay. I'm the Executive Director of the Government Blockchain Association, and we're pleased to have you join us today for the Gaming Working Group's presentation on distributed autonomous lottery discussion. The group is led by Ross and Tara Sue, and they've got their panel together. So we're really excited about this space. I'm going to let Ross and Tara Sue tell you all about their working group, introduce the panelists, and have the discussion. So Ross and Tara Sue, it's all on you. And you are muted, Tara. There you go.
Roger that. So thank you. This is an awesome group, and we're so excited that it's been established for the GBA. It's perfect for us. Ross and I have put together this panel, but there's a couple of individuals that won't be here today, unfortunately, but I think that Gideon will be able to cover some of the missing links, and Ross and I will be able to cover those for Michael Mendyke. So to begin, our history comes from charitable giving and charitable doing. We are 15 to 17 years we spent trying to get charities into the digital space, okay? Moving them from their ground game and bringing it online. Arduous. And in that process, we learned about charitable gaming and were asked to consult on some projects that had come across the board, i.e. sweepstakes being one of the first models, because it actually digitized something that was very abused before. They're called pot of gold machines. Actually, it's something that was one of the biggest money makers in the gaming industry, but the members could cream off the top and it was all a cash game and nothing could be managed. So we came in, and sweepstakes was a very gray market. So we learned about the gray, and we came to understand what was going on there. It looks like a duck, walks like a duck, it's a goose. And so in our process of helping these charities get through the gaming space, we ourselves were givers and donors, and through our work with the veterans community, which our roots are military family, combat military family specifically. And we found that there were some interesting characteristics there. Number one, veterans and their organizations have the legislated right to game. They can raise money through games of chance. We also found that the web experience, the digitization, there was a need for a meeting point there. So that's where we come from in the space, from the ground game all the way up to actually building games with peer plays and demonstrating a model that meets the need for nonprofits today and competing for mobile. Okay. Oh, let's go through this last piece here. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find. Can I share my screen? With, oh, thank you. Okay, let me just. All right. So the two main objectives of this get together is to show, and I took some notes as we went along the introduction, show how this gaming touches so many aspects of what the GBA is passionate about. And also it gives us the opportunity to get us in the game ourselves as an organization, okay? So I'm gonna just go down just touch base here with you. I'll introduce the panel. So we've met Shiv through Earth ID. Myself, Michael Mendyke might be able to come in. And then, well, Shiv, you've introduced yourself, and Gideon, he's joined us. He's with our company, the Gaming Benefits Corporation, and we've been working with Owen Whalen of Pure Plays, as you met. And what we have here in the state of charitable gaming is that all these new emergent games are hitting the table. You've got Sportsbook coming to the forefront, moving games online, PAPSA changing the marketplace, and charitable gaming has now more competition than ever. It behooves us to get this industry mobilized in such a way that we can actually measure its social impact. So in our examination of this lottery raffle, well, lottery and raffle interchangeably used, we are looking at how bringing all the other charitable gaming models, affiliate programs, and so forth, and putting it in the hands of the nonprofit itself so that it's no longer being taken advantage of by the charitable consultants and other players in the marketplace. Because at the end of the day, these nonprofits, they might get a penance of what could have potentially come to them. And with that, so the state of charitable gaming overall, overarching for us as volunteers ourselves, is we have a 70-year-old player base that is starting to use smartphones today, but is still needing the bridge into the online space. And getting these tools in the hands of those volunteers, which the law relies upon. So like some attorneys in the space, they always say, well, the charities are lazy, because they are the ones with the legislated right, the license. So they don't have the capacity to manage it. And they use consultants and other providers to come in, and then they take advantage of their lack of knowledge. Whereas their need for other web development and so forth calls for this all to come together as a donors portal. So moving forward then, I'd like to pass the ball off on to Ross and I. We can both discuss responsible gaming. Michael was going to touch on this, but what we found is that when we can give the donor the ability to make decisions, then we're starting to open up the transparency of the game at the base level. This is what corporate social responsibility has proven, is that if you give them this opportunity, it's going to grow business. You know, before they used to say or question, the argument was that it's not the corporation's job to take care of social problems. But what we've learned, it is their job in the sense that it's their bottom line. And when you are a responsible corporation, it's good for business. The gaming industry itself has demonstrated that it's on the corporate social responsibility leadership path, all right? When you're dealing with gaming, you have all these elements that require you to take care of those problem gambling aspects, to make sure the age requirements are met, to, in their case, in the casino's case, recycle their trash, okay? But what we know is that there's not a strong measurement of the actual impact of the corporate social responsibility and actually what it is doing in the community. It ends up being just a check that gets written to a charity. So when we add blockchain and all the other wonderful aspects like your loyalty, tokenization, the identity management and fraud prevention, we can take that corporate social responsibility benchmark and raise it significantly within the gaming industry. And that industry touches on so many aspects of everyday life, particularly charitable gaming, and extends this blockchain knowledge base further into the market. One of the things, you know, we're just newly recruited members to the GBA. And we've been digging down to your all's work over the last few years online, the other recordings. One of the common themes that we've heard is that, you know, how do we get it out there? It's such a hard road. It's a long road. But when we focus in on charitable gaming, we can, and specifically where we focus is with veterans, we can get to all those other aspects that each of you are addressing in your own GBA worlds. And it's a step removed, but it exists, like the healthcare industry, for instance. All these veteran service organizations in the United States are chartered to help veterans receive their health benefits, their health entitlements. And so when you've educated the donor volunteer and you've brought them into this space, there is an example of how now that you bring that organization into its new elevation of blockchain into other aspects of its business. And for us, that's what blockchain does, is it brings all the responsibility, not just in the operations of a game, or the operations of a nonprofit, but it also brings the responsibility in how the mission is executed and what is actually provided. I speak specifically to veterans because I know that there is a lot of contention that, you know, the VSOs, veteran service organizations, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be enrolling veterans into the VA healthcare system. That's their core mission, is to support veterans, but their goal is to get them signed up into the VA healthcare system. So in doing so, they missed the ball, because in the state of New Hampshire where we live, there's only 33% that are signed up. This is federal money, tax dollars that could be potentially invested in the area and into families. So that's just one example. You can go, I've given Gerard other examples of how you can go all the way out from charitable gaming and touch the community and the stakeholders in multiple levels. Now our goal is to come in and set the example as a GBA group, as an association. And in order to do this, to capitalize for the greatest value, is to be ourselves a charitable organization operating our own in-house lottery that we can then deliver to the community and show them a working example with best practices and best applications to educate the community in a fun space. Now, and with that, I'm going to hand it off to Shiv on identity management and fraud prevention. Shiv.
Thank you, Tara. I think, so you have set a very, very strong scene with respect to, I think, the gaming industry as such, right? But I think when we talk about any interaction that we have, I think be it digital, be it physical, I think there's always a flavor of identity, right? In the sense like we have to kind of introduce ourselves with respect to bring trust, bring credibility to any conversation that we are having. And that is where I think identity plays a very, very strong role in every aspect of what we do and who we are, right? And I think that is where I think identity management becomes a very strong, very crucial concern across the different industries. And I think when we talk about charity, I think it becomes more and more relevant because as we have discussed, right, there are a lot of frauds or thefts that happen with respect to, I think, defrauding and misappropriation of money. And I think that is where, when we look at identity management as an aspect within gaming and gambling industry, I think there are certain aspects that we have to discuss about. One is obviously identity thefts and frauds, in the sense that whenever we are kind of interacting with organizations or platforms or even individuals, I think we have to create a platform where we ensure that the credibility is there, and then the identity that being shared is basically authentic. Then other aspects are basically with respect to the onboarding processes, right? So in the sense that whenever you are going to participate as a platform, you have to basically onboard your users. So the question is like, how do you ensure that that is a seamless process in terms of allowing your users to basically interact with your platform? Then it's also about compliance, right? Because obviously when we are the gaming, gambling, the lottery, I think, and even the not-for-profit organizations, they are heavily regulated, and then there are regional regulations that, or the regional compliance that we have to cater to. And then I think it's also about, because in a lot of interactions or in a lot of places where we are kind of verifying or sharing our identity, we end up using a lot of our documents. For example, I was trying to basically onboard myself on a online gaming platform, and then they asked me to basically kind of upload my passport, my driving license. So, and then what happens is, like, when I've uploaded those documents, a lot of times they get misused. And also, I think we are now living in a global world where I think the borders are kind of diminishing in terms of the digital world. So the question is like the identities that we have currently, whether they are borderless or not, right? Because I think when we interact with global platforms, even gaming, gambling, or even any other space, the question is like whether my identity is able to basically do justice to the way I want to interact borderlessly. And lastly, it's also about the reliability quotient, right? Because obviously, when we talk about the financial world, we are aware of the concept of credit score, but then I think that is kind of skewed to the people who are rich or who have a strong financial presence. But then there are a lot of people who are unbanked. And when we talk about charities, I think a lot of times we are dealing with people who are either have fallen for poverty, or they are they are unbanked. So that is where again I think it's like, how do we create a mechanism where the credit score doesn't actually work against them. So it's like maybe a mechanism where we can have a alternate credit score which can actually kind of help them access to the services being provided by the public bodies, the governments, the charities, and everything. So in that sense, there are quite a few aspects which we need to kind of cater to when we are talking about identity management. And then I think that is where it becomes important, that then we start looking at two aspects, right? One is from the organization point of view, and then the second thing is from the user point of view, right? So obviously when we talk about the user, the question is like, who owns the identity data, right? So in the sense, like, if I am kind of sharing my information to interact with a charity or with a gaming platform, so who's owning that information, right? And that is where the concept of self sovereignty comes in, because it's the data is actually the ownership lies with the user, and then they should be able to basically kind of have the control. They should basically have the privacy in terms of what they share, with whom they share, and when they share. And I think that I think these are very important concepts from a user standpoint. And then obviously when we talk about the organizations, I think what happens is like, obviously a lot of identity thefts and frauds happens on the platforms. I think this is where we can look at a decentralization as a mechanism to kind of secure the data that we have. Also, it's about compliance and regulatory challenges. So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, that how do you ensure that you are, so when we look at the global landscape, we have strong data protection guidelines all over the world. So we have GDPR in Europe, we have PDPB in India, and then there's so many others globally which need to be complied with. Otherwise, there are a lot of financial issues or fines that come into play. And then also when we talk about this charitable gaming, I think we would also have to be kind of aware of the issues with respect to the age, right? Because obviously there would be certain regulations around who can participate and who cannot. So I think this is where identity is a very important and crucial aspect, and that is what even at GBA, with the identity management working group, that is what we are trying to do, right? So we want to ensure that we are able to use decentralize as a concept to ensure that the identity that we are using across different industries, they are safe and secure. So I think I would stop here at this point in time. Tara, back to you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just, I'm in a cave here with this Zoom. So Owen, you're up on Fair and Loyal Gaming, my friend.
Thank you, Tarsu. And Shiv, thank you. I think it ties in with what you're referring to in terms of, identity protection and, KYC and all of that. When we talk about the overarching theme here, which is provably fair gaming, really blockchain and provably fair gaming go way back to the first instances of use cases of blockchain. It was very clear that it was one of the key and early use cases and adopters, the whole gaming sector, and really, it ties into where we are now with charitable gaming, as well as what we refer to as iGaming, in that there is a predominant concern that there's not transparent practices and protection for both the end user and the operator, but also there's not transparent and protected practices that are not manipulated to support the regulators in terms of doing their job in regulating both the kind of traditional land-based gaming or the online gaming, or across to charitable gaming. And this is where blockchain has always been that pillar of white hope, or that white knight, in that it is leveraging the pillars that really support the technology, which is complete transparency, immutable data, the prevention of any central organization to manipulate the outcomes of a particular scenario. And particularly when it comes to charitable gaming, across the globe, there are huge concerns and evidence that centralized powers and centralized figures have manipulated the activities within charitable games to the detriment of the charity as well as the end user. And the regulators are left without the appropriate tools and data to kind of do their policing and supporting job. So we've been working on this premise for the last 4 or 5 years, very much in the space of stripping back decentralized kind of controls and kind of structures around the gaming world and replacing them with a distributed ledger platform with consensus mechanisms that really separate out the kind of the key components where control is. Take, for example, an RNG, random number generator, which is a typical tool or component within a raffle or an iGame like a casino game or a bingo. Typically, an RNG is centrally run, centrally controlled by, unfortunately, the operator. And again, the regulators or the testing houses have only a certain view into the operating activity of that RNG and whether it's meeting standards or not. And really, I think those testing kind of platforms and testing frameworks, like for example, the GLI standard 31 in terms of raffles, at times they may be viewed as out of date in this current digital world. So our view is that blockchain helps to move the dial forward, protect the end user, and really support the regulators in protecting the end user by, again, using the algorithms that are embedded in the whole ethos of blockchain, using the decentralized consensus mechanisms that most blockchains apply when validating data on the blockchain, and also very much embedding that philosophy that there's no, going forward, one central organization should not be processing, controlling some of these key activities. So we've worked with, just a side note into Pure Place for a moment, because I think it's quite important to kind of touch on where we're nonprofit as well, and we're very much the voice for the gaming sector. And we have been developing in partnership with our community features and components to detangle or decentralize the gaming world. And one of those key components is a decentralized RNG, random number generator, which utilizes, as I said, distributed ledger technology, utilizes the fact that a consensus mechanism is in play within our blockchain. So you have that double layer of, I suppose, transparency, both within how the RNG, how the random number is generated, as well as how the data and details are stored on the blockchain. And again, we're seeing that this is a welcome development in this space, because again, the end user, there's a strong view that the current regulations and the current testing practices are not up to date to support the digital world. So we have developed as a test space our RNG with a digital raffle, and we have that in place to explore how a digital raffle using a decentralized RNG would play out, and that's working quite successfully. Tara Sue, back to you as a quick ramble into loyalty gaming.
Great, thank you, Owen. Gideon, I'm so glad that you're here, Gideon. So let's put you to work on talking about, as a segue from what Owen was just speaking to, although you can speak to a lot of different aspects. Tell us about the affiliate marketing and fair and loyal gaming.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, great.
Okay, great. My name is, again, Gideon Van Kessel, and I also come from the gaming and lottery world. And probably most of you are wondering why most of the panel are gaming guys and lottery guys. It's pretty simple. We encounter regulatory bodies all over the world on a daily basis, because when we deploy a gaming solution, we deal with regulators all over the US. We deal with regulators all over Europe, Africa, Asia. So we are well entrenched, and we're very aware of what, most of us already have a regulatory in-house department that will deal with these things. So, and also, of course, gaming is one of the highest tax industries in the world. That's why a lot of the blockchain people come from the gaming and lottery world. When it comes to affiliate, the reason why I took the affiliate subject was because GDPR is coming to the US. It's already imposed in Europe. And part of GDPR basically means that we have to know our customer, and we have to be aware of AML and KYC. And by putting an affiliate program, that basically means we are the guys that are driving the traffic to the websites, to the lottery sites, the charitable gaming sites, the lottery, the Powerballs of the world and the Mega Millions of the world. The regulators want to know that that we are upholding the GDPR. And blockchain is a perfect solution for that, because it's 100% transparent. Regulators will have a dashboard. They can have access at any time and any day to what's going on within that space, within that regulatory area. And that's one of the reasons why I think blockchain could be a huge benefit in the gaming and lottery, and especially charitable gaming space. Now, why charitable gaming? It's a lower hanging fruit, but I think regulators are more open, and also charitable gaming users are more open to get a digital footprint and to be part of this, purely because it's to benefit an organization, right? And any way that we can enhance a 501c3, because I've also been in the 501c3 space, which is actually a luxury that the government provides to you in the US, if you do get a 501c3 status, is to really make it 100% transparent. Right now, the only charitable gaming transparency I've seen so far is probably in Texas, where there's 1 or 2 casinos that are running on a charitable gaming license. And what they would have to do is they would just have to publish their daily financials on a website. And so regulators would have to go to that website and would have to trust whatever the casino publishes is what's really going on. Now, if we were to put that on a blockchain, there would be no manipulation of those numbers and figures, and we can actually see how and where these numbers come from, just to give you an example. I've also spent quite a bit of time in Africa. I heard there was a lady from South Korea that is looking at Africa. I took on a project there 2 years ago with Niger Lottery, and I found that Africa is very advanced when it comes to payment, even cryptocurrency payment solutions. It's way more advanced than we are in Europe and in the US. And so we had, when I was with Quanta, we targeted a lottery in Nigeria. And we've been working with that lottery ever since to really overcome a lot of the issues that we would foresee in the future here in the US or Europe. So I'm open to answer any questions. I'm sorry, I'm not 100%, but you can ask any questions you want here. Thank you. Teresu? Hello? I just lost you, Tara.
All right. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
All right. Yeah. So Gerard and team, do you guys have any questions so far before I drive further on this train?
Yeah, let's open it up for a minute because I know a lot of the folks on this call and they have a lot to say. So any comments from anybody on the call? And you can unmute yourself. You don't have to put it in the chat box because I kind of just like to hear people talk.
Yes.
So Gerard, this is Michael. I do see a lot of similarities between this and what we're doing on the voting working group for obvious reasons. That is, things like identity, regulation, etc. But it's fascinating. It's an area, the charitable gambling. It's an area I had not thought of applying blockchain to. So I'm now have a lot more reading to do this week.
Well, our voting working group is currently working on standards, right? Because for those of you who don't know about GBA working groups, in fact, I'm going to share my screen for a second. Share screen. This is going to stop that screen. Okay. So for those folks that don't know about GBA working groups, let me pull this over. This is a GBA gaming working group. So underneath, if you go to gbaglobal.org, underneath working groups, you'll see this list, and so we got working groups on all these different subjects, right? Artificial intelligence, acquisition management, asset data, budget accountability, and campaign and fundraising, cannabis, right? I mean everything, cybersecurity. Now, Michael mentioned there's gaming right there. Michael mentioned voting, which I think is down here at the end.
It's under the V's for voting.
Yeah. So they're working on standards. And one of the things that's interesting about all of these different working groups is anybody in government can join GBA for free. And they come to these working groups and they say, here's a problem, here's a challenge that we're trying to solve. And the working groups say, here's our solution, here's our white papers, here's our demos. And then the idea is to help the public sector and the private sector connect, communicate, and collaborate because the traditional acquisition process is relatively slow compared to this very, very fast moving train, right? And so this kind of leads me to the question, Tara, this goes to you or to member in your panelists. Are there any kinds of standards that we need to consider in terms of how do we kick this can down the courts? Are there any sort of standards issues?
There's 50. There's at least 50 in the US, right? Every jurisdiction has its own gaming standard. In some states, you are not permitted as a manufacturer or gaming supplier on specifically to a raffle to charge more than 10%, for instance, okay? So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in New Hampshire, where we live, where, raffle being one of the older games, or lottery, okay? New Hampshire was the first state to adopt a state-sponsored lottery, which makes it also kind of a nice place to play for innovation. It is the state that did take down PAPSA as well, and is trying to open this door for mobile. So when we think about those kinds of considerations, and Gideon, chime in yourself.
I'm here. Actually, when it comes to the voting, what's the gentleman that just asked about voting?
Michael Novak.
Yeah,
Michael,
sorry. Yes.
Hey, are you familiar with Canadian banknote?
I am familiar, but not deeply knowledgeable of. Again, I just see a lot of similarities, and I'm not proposing they're the same because the voting group is focused, as George said, specifically on currently, voting standards in relation to elections of public officials, not any other type of voting. But I do see at a very high level abstract, of course, if I'm participating in a charitable lottery, I submit my vote for value X, and I hope I win.
Oh, I see what you mean. Because Canadian Banknote is, of course, a banknote company in Canada.
Correct.
They also have a gaming division, a very fluent gaming division. They're one of my clients. I've done a lot of work with them in the past. They also have an identity department, and they also have voting machines department. They actually sell voting machines in the U.S. to certain states, and they make some of the
Yes.
driver's license in the use. And all this technology comes from their gaming division, which is quite unique. I don't think they've adopted blockchain to any of that yet, to any of those verticals, but I do know that they're looking at adopting blockchain to those verticals. But again, it's a Canadian company, very interesting. And they've been one of my clients for over 15 years. And again, you know, they deal with governments and regulators directly. They've got the Canadian seal of approval, so they don't participate in RFPs. But again, it's a push-pull, right? How do we? The big question is how can we actually convince a regulator or a government or a regulatory body or an IRS, for example, because I know the IRS is also looking at blockchain heavily. I've done quite a bit of work with them. They're actually they're really pleasurable to work with, the IRS. They're always looking for new solutions to make things easier and better. You'd be surprised. Right. How can we actually convince these guys that it works and that they should adopt it in the near future? That's the big challenge. And how can we make operators feel comfortable? Because operators right now in the utility space, gaming space, lottery space, they feel that by adopting blockchain, it's too transparent, they're going to lose revenue. And I'm completely against that. I believe that, yes, there might be a slow fall in revenue, but as you adopt it across the board, revenue will come back up, and everybody will be happy. There'll be less issues down the road. Then, of course, we have a big challenge in the US. Not everybody's digital, right? In Africa, for example, in Nigeria, everybody has a top-up card. They're all digital down there. Even the cash walkers, they have a top-up card. We don't have that here. I was working with Powerball and Mega Millions. They don't have one email address of one of their clients, yet they're running the biggest jackpot in the world. How are you planning? Are you planning on adopting a blockchain solution to that? If none of them are tokenized, none of the users are tokenized, you know. So these are some major challenges that we're up against, right?
Do you mean none of the users or IDs are tokenized?
They don't have one email address of one of their clients, not one.
Are you referring to profiles or players?
No, I'm referring to they have no idea who's buying their tickets, other than they have a segment because they know where majority of their tickets are sold. And if it's in a Black poor community, then they say, well, it's the Black poor people that are buying it. They don't have a name, a person. They have no identity footprint of one person buying a lottery ticket in the US. Not the state lotteries, nor the multi-state ones like Powerball and Mega Millions. You know,
quick question. Do you think that's actually in their favor, or do you think that's something that is a decision that is made by the executive office?
No. Well, first of all, it's illegal to do online lottery in the US, right? And that's because they feel that, well, first of all, we need the federal government to do a similar thing like they did with sports betting, where banks can participate. You know, if you make it federally legal, then you can use credit cards to buy something online when it comes to gaming and lottery. If the big problem with lottery is you can't use credit cards in the US because, hello?
I just muted him.
Yeah, so in the lottery space, for example, you cannot use you have to use cash. You can't use credit card because the moment you buy a lottery ticket with a credit card, it's considered gambling. It's not considered lottery, right? Because you're gambling. You can charge back if you don't win, for example. Plus, you don't pay your bill till the end of the month, so you're speculating on the lottery. So that's a big issue here in the US when it comes to lottery and giving them a digital footprint. Now, on the other hand, with GDPR coming in place, if there is a client that would like to purchase a ticket and complies to GDPR and the rules and regulations of how to buy a ticket, then, you know, we could sell it online, but first we have to wait for the regulators to go online, right? That's a challenge here in the US for now. But because of COVID, online lottery licenses are being issued as we speak. Lotteries are going online as we speak. So now is the perfect time for us to really get aggressive and get a really good regulatory body to participate with us and launch a solid blockchain solution for them. And I think the charitable gaming, it's a lower hanging fruit, and I think it's a perfect sector to do this in. in the US.
Hey, Gideon, could you speak to lottery.com?
Yeah, I know Miko. I know lottery.com. It got sold. Miko bought it. I know all about lottery.com. So lottery.com made a big mistake, in my opinion. They went after the state and multi-level lottery guys that are hand tied to regulators, and they're hand tied to their state regulatory laws. I know Miko Matsumuro very well, as a matter of fact. He's a good friend of mine. He was part of acquiring, I'm sure you know Miko. He was one part of acquiring lottery.com. So I am familiar with it.
Quick question in regards to, I believe there was a movie out where the online gambling world, especially ones located in Caribbean islands, and the, like you said, I think it's secondary or multi-level marketing that is used for digital gambling. Does that have an impact on regulator decisions, as well as,
I think you're going to see multi-level marketing coming back on a 3-stage level, agent, super agent, and multi-super agent. I think you're going to see that tier coming back. Good example is BetNaja. BetNaja in Nigeria is now one of the largest sports betting platforms in the world, only selling in Nigeria and only dealing with cash users. Okay, and how do they do that? By implementing a 3-stage multi-level marketing scheme. It's not a scheme, sorry, I shouldn't say that. By implementing a very simple 3-tier level marketing. So you have an agent out there that takes the cash, walks around with a POS, gives them the order, right? And then you have a super agent that manages
via text.
No, it's all done. Well, yes, either via text or they get a receipt, right? Because some of these POSs have a receipt, so they get a receipt. A big problem in Nigeria with the receipts is they're dealing with elements there, rain, all kinds of stuff. The receipts gets wet, and so we came up with pouches to put the receipts in, but through a three-level marketing scheme.
So similar to insurance, where you have, let's say, merchant accounts, you have aggregators, and you have the super aggregators, or let's say the big insurance money that really covers the whole industry.
Right. I'm actually also a Beachbody coach. Are you familiar with Beachbody? My wife and I were Beachbody coach. So I do understand multi-level marketing quite a bit. I think you're going to see that coming back. Yes.
Everybody that's on the call right now, I think it's important to really explain it, if you could, because it's not multi-level marketing. It's more so business structure, or it's just a business model.
That's right. Yeah, it's not multi-level marketing. It's just a 3-tier level of marketing a product, right? It's all it really is. And where the multi-level marketing part comes in is that the 3 divisions each takes a piece of what's sold, right? It could be usually successful in very cash run countries like Latin America, Africa. They're deploying these at a mass scale. Another one of my clients is Silvio Santos in Brazil with SBTV. They have 500,000 people on the street on a 3-tier level, selling anything from lottery tickets to Tupperware, right now to PPE products, and it's all done on a 3-tier level.
Hey,
very powerful.
Can I break in real quick? Tara,
yeah.
Can I ask you to kind of walk through it? If we were to set up a lottery for the GBA and do the foundation and can you kind of walk through what that process would look like, as how we would do it as an organization, and potentially how we could model then how other organizations could benefit from the same?
Right. So, and this is, I'm showing my screen here. So what we did with Pure Place and our veterans here in New Hampshire through the Marine Corps League. The Marine Corps League is the veteran service organization specifically for the Marine Corps. we like to use the term first to fight. So we're trying to be the first to fight out here for a good blockchain based raffle that does what a donor or a volunteer would want. So what I did was I took basically some screenshots that the wonderful designers at Pure Place put forth for our Marines, and I showed how we could kind of modify this for, say, a government blockchain charity. This is all just spitball, okay? But if you could imagine a platform where, and we could simplify this, it's all changeable, of course, but where you come to the Government Blockchain Foundation's fundraiser and you identify something of interest to you. Choose a work group project or choose a project, whatever, right? Maybe you just want to go to the GBA Foundation, the overarching organization. Or maybe you want to focus in on fundraising, or maybe I'd love to see voting, blockchain voting in here, right? Or maybe we want to fund Blockchain Week itself, or maybe we want to fund a specific aspect of the foundation's mission. You know, you're giving donor control and management, and how we envision this working is like with a state-based lottery where it's so across the board, there's not a lot of accountability there. They have mandates for education, but nobody knows where it goes. If you give the donor, the voter, the taxpayer the ability to choose, well, they will probably come back, and then we can also compare and contrast where the money is going publicly. We can show a screen. I don't have that screen here, but there is actually a place on the Marine Corps raffle where you can go and see what different detachments under this master charity, how many others are participating. We show we take it off the top, okay, the costs, they come off the top. And obviously there's going to be some costs for, we're envisioning, because we're building the model, okay? So we envision something along the lines of that blockchain expense has to come there, because in mobile gaming, there's a transaction cost, always. What you'll find though, if you dig into raffles currently in play, my gosh, read the rules, because it'll say something like, we'll decide how much money you get at the end of the day. The prize pool pays all expenses, or the charity pays all expenses. What we've done is, we call it a 50-50-50. 50% after expenses are taken off the top goes to the nonprofit, and 50% goes to the prize pool. And that's what you're seeing here as it breaks down: funds raised, grand prize, next jackpot. What we do with the 50% of that prize pool is we divide it in half again. The reason is progressive jackpots are ones that get played. One of the problems raffles have today for like these smaller charities is building big jackpots. Quite difficult, and you could seed a raffle. We've done that. We've had sponsors seed raffles. But if you take give them a second chance, so they're in for the monthly, the weekly, or the daily, whatever time period for which they purchased their ticket. And then the other half of the money goes into the rollover grand jackpot. So you come in and you choose which ticket packets you would like to purchase. We tell you a little bit about who you chose. You put in your payment information. And then you receive an email with this type of messaging, giving you your entry numbers, which are recorded on the blockchain. And of course, the transaction itself is there. And it lets you know how to get in touch. And of course, the final, and this is kind of envisioned like we're looking at a charity here in New Hampshire to be kind of an overarching charity. So in this case, where the Government Blockchain Foundation would be the overarching charity, you could add a group. You know, if your group's not in the charity game, we'll add a group. But in the sense of what our effort, it would have been add another nonprofit, add your nonprofit. And by putting all these nonprofits together, working on the same team, we build that larger jackpot. Then of course, we ask them to share the game. But that's boy, this is just a basic functionality that we have in play with the beta of the Marine Corps League. But we can see how now that the portions and charities themselves, we don't like it when the state decides to do a fundraiser and just gives a penance to us. What we like is when the state does a fundraiser and they get their slice. But here, the people, the boots on the ground who are really doing the work, they get the majority. So it encourages the long tail to help promote the raffle and build the jackpot and get it out there through their affiliates and their supporters.
And then, Tara Sue, we were talking in terms of the kinds of things that the foundation, because for it to be a 501c3, it actually has to be charitable, right? I mean, this is different than our 501c6, which is a business league. So people join GBA. We invite people to join GBA because it's a good business decision for them, right? Or if they're in the government, it's a good career decision, or it'll help them achieve their organizational goals and objectives, right? But the foundation, the purpose of the foundation will be to do charitable work, right? And so we talked about some of those things that we thought were worthy of our efforts, and primarily in the area of education. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yes, let me pull up this little slide here or image. One of the things that's really important to consider is obviously the times, okay? You've got a situation, I'm going to talk about two aspects. One for the charities who can no longer do their good work, right? They're struggling, they need to meet online, and that's one of the aspects we're working to address. They also need to raise funds, and mobile gaming is key. The other piece, though, is that the lottery itself there's 23 states that have mandated lottery for education. And where we seem to be as an organization is in the position of always having to educate. So if we could come around the bend with a charitable organization that is focused on enhancing and improving education, and through blockchain technological applications, then and do this on a local level, because I think some speakers have mentioned, and Gideon pointed out, it's so difficult to get the state to move. So you start local or start within an organization itself, like the GBA, and we bust it out with our core mission, perhaps being based on, I think I put here, I'll show you, the GB. Authenticate educational success for learners, schools, and communities through the application of blockchain technologies. This was just spitballing because I did see the video about, his name's Brian, right? Gerard, he had this wonderful application that tracked the facial expressions of the learner to help create a better learning pathway for students. Now, from our perspective with our company, Gaming Benefits Corporation, and corporate social responsibility, authenticated through the utilization of these remote learning platforms that have to be adopted. These learning platforms, they're so weak right now. We're so, the US is always so behind, right? We're the youngest on the planet out here. We're the babes in the woods, and we need to move everything digital. Well, the students and our key. And when we talk about voting, let me just break off here and let's talk about voting, because I love that you brought voting into the picture here, Gerard.
Hey, Teresa, hold on. Before you slide into voting, I just want to say one more thing about education, right? I think that the need for economic recovery, right, coming out of this post-pandemic, in this post-pandemic phase, we look at the economic devastation, and we look at the need for many parts of the world in first world and third world, right, to do economic development. So whether we're talking about poor and underserved communities here in the U.S., or we're talking about unskilled workers in the Southern Hemisphere, I think that training people on blockchain solutions and technology provides economic development opportunities. So we ought to be able to get governments that are interested in economic development to say, yes, we want to bring educational solutions, educational technology that, and according to LinkedIn, blockchain is I think slated for next year to be the #1 hard skill that employers are going to look for, right? So we have a full suite of capabilities, from providing highly relevant and valuable content that can be provided by GBA members, right, that have lots of skills in the blockchain space. They can educate people, entrepreneurs, kids, provide that. And then on top of that, we have the platform And then we have other issues that we may want to take a look at, like, for example, all the fraud in the student loan space, right? 38% of the US's assets are in the form of student loans, right? And many of those student loans essentially have been fraudulently given out, and the student loan default rate has gone from 500 billion to 1.6 trillion, right? So if we just look at education, that gives us so many avenues to make a real positive impact in the lives of individuals, communities, and nations.
Well,
Right?
I see two pieces of the for the education component, or for the GBA's foundation, that it has its own educational tutorials and curriculum that it can offer to schools, right? As a nonprofit, here's some education materials, because they're dying for it, and it all has to be digitized and available for students anywhere. And then the other component would be the charitable gaming aspect of, we're gonna lead by example. Here's the charitable game that we're gonna use to raise funds, etc. Now, on the education application, when you for the economic development component, you know, we spend a lot of money on education, but have really no accountability. And
Right.
the next application that we want to create is the one where we use, and we have audience here, we have a online educational platform that we recruited from Romania, and Peer Plays generously has put it on North American servers, so we don't have to jump the pond. But what we envision is an assessment tool, not only for the learner, like has been built, but an assessment tool for the educational experience itself. For instance, if I'm a student and instead of filling out the paper admin form showing that I'm there, there's my photograph, I'm in class, I pressed it, I took the picture on my device. And when I take a lesson, there's an assessment of that lesson at the end. And every time I provide an assessment, starting with the student first, because there's not enough student-centered learning, and if we break it down technically, where we let the student provide that assessment input, now we can measure the results of the teacher's efforts as well. And the teachers can do the same thing for students and for each other and for their peers. And in this way, if we bring this blockchain immutable verification of assessing, then we go to the taxpayer with verifiable information, so that when they make their decisions on that real estate tax on their property, they're doing it with true data. Instead of making sweeping changes to the space, the teachers will go out and they'll say, hey, we need to raise money for the schools, and everybody's heart bleeds. But not all teachers should have that raised. And those teachers that needs, it's not to say we've got to slit throats, it's to identify issues and address them, and give them the pathway towards future development, because they also fund their professional.
Terry, let me
Please.
pause you. Let me just pause you for a second. So I think that when we look at the concept of creating a charitable gaming solution for an organization like the GBA or the Government Blockchain Foundation, right? One of the things that I see that is just really exciting is we as an organization can do a lot of things. And I think the education space that's a big space where we can do lotteries and games to fund that, but equally as thrilling, all of our different working groups, right? They could interact with this the same way. So our space working group could say, we'd like to do a lottery that funds space exploration, right? Or our budget accountability and transparency working group, right? Could say, hey, we want to bring ethics and integrity to the government. And what I'm really excited about this project is giving the GBA community, right, an opportunity to be able to identify, hey, what are the things, how do we want to impact the world for good? Then coming over to the charitable, to the gaming group and saying, hey, can you set up a lottery for us, right? Because you have these things here, but you know, we would like to validate these with the working groups and essentially come up with a consensus. Maybe we use our distributed autonomous organization working group, right, to help come up with decision models for what are the what are the high value social goods that we can do. It's just really exciting.
Gerard, I think to your point, right? I think one more crucial aspect is also with respect to identity, which is like a cross-cutting, because I think there are two problems that we should also look at, right? So I think one is with respect to inclusion, because we are talking about education, we are talking about gaming lot from having that financial inclusion, right? And secondly, with respect to fraud prevention, I think these are the two common themes that we have discussed today with respect to how do we basically include I think maybe underprivileged people or maybe unbanked people, and then secondly, basically how do we prevent fraud in the education system, in the gaming system, in the lottery system, or even in the charity system. So I think that is where I think we should also look at the cross-cutting aspect with respect to digital identity, and then how do we ensure that the transparency and I think is built into the system.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'd like to hear from some of the folks on the call that have been commenting in the chat. And so let me throw out to Ryan first, if you want to go ahead and take yourself off mute. Ryan, did you want to make some comments that you'd like to, that you want to share with us?
Just trying to follow along. I think a lot of times the big, there's a lot of conflation between technical change aspects of blockchain initiatives and like policy and legislation. And it's like, will blockchain solve fraud? But no. Blockchain is a tool that can provide auditability, and derivative effects might have positive incomes, but blockchain itself is not going to solve fraud. It's not going to change people's behavior. So I'm really looking for the user interface patterns, working examples of real software on the market today that can do this, because this stuff isn't really we're past the theoretical phase. I've seen stuff that's working, and I would really like to ground the conversation in hard use cases and roadmaps and things to actually deliver, because I just think a lot of times it's easy to talk about all of the change on the other side of when blockchain is everywhere and people actually, the notion of a multi-chain future, that doesn't, that's not going to work in my opinion. Blockchain is a very boring technology. It's really an economic innovation. And until people really understand that, and I think blockchain being a number one hard skill, that, it makes no sense. It's not a hard skill. It's not the number one skill. It's a very popular topic. It's trendy, but at the end of the day, there's going to be very few people who are actually working on blockchain, and then a lot of people are going to be integrating it into their applications and their their workflow. But people aren't going to be caring about how transactions are emitted and auditability of code on chain. Most people don't care. That's just I think the reality. And so figuring out how to just make it invisible plumbing that's just better for the people that actually do care, auditors, journalists, researchers, program managers, people tasked with integrating data between industries or organizations. But it's not going to just as much as everybody cares about accounting now, right? People don't care as long as I can swipe my credit card and the transaction goes through. That's the user experience that people are after. And I just want to make sure that we don't conflate changing the world with the blockchain, because just as much as AI is going to, it's a tool. So I just want to make sure.
Let me share some thoughts on that.
Hold on. I agree with Ryan. Blockchain is not going to solve all our problems. I don't know if you guys noticed, I put a black paper on, and I put a couple of lotteries that are running blockchain with RNGs that were GLI approved, or they were approved by some approval house, maybe not GLI, but maybe somebody else, and were still considered fraud. They could still manipulate the lottery. So what I'm trying, I agree with Ryan. This is not 100% solution to fraud, but we can make it. It's maybe a better solution to what we have today by implementing some form of a blockchain into our what we're discussing right now, which is charitable gaming. And don't forget, Ryan, am I right that an actual transaction on a blockchain is considered a lottery transaction? Isn't that true?
Not necessarily. I mean, a lottery transaction would be a subclass, like a transaction could be, you know,
Yeah.
But not necessarily.
One comment I wanted to make. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
One comment I want to make is I think that there's a sort of transition, that it's the same thing we've been doing, but for people that are regulators or worried about compliance, whether you can see it on your screen, if it's displayed, whether you get a confirmation, whether if you lose your money, you have an insurance. There's some trepidation, I would say, about more, you need mass adoption for this to be just a new way that we swipe a credit card. So, you know, if you swipe a credit card one way, you may be governed by the Treasury Department. But if you swipe it another way for something else, then you may be governed by a whole different governmental agency. Then that's considered, you know, gaming. And so you definitely need integration and adoption on a big scale. So you have to get people excited about the new technology. Like for me, to think about moving things to the cloud was just outrageous, that you would store data in the cloud. And the cloud is still very much unregulated as far as privacy and everything else. So now we have things that are in the cloud, that can be in the cloud because it's a nice, cheap way to store data. But then there are people like me that feel like it needs to be kind of in a mainframe and, you know, grounded in some room somewhere, you know, where it feels like.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Gerard, can I make a point here? Sorry.
Sure, we're all itching to respond. Go ahead.
So Gerard, I think I have a slightly take from what Ryan said and the others, because I think obviously I think it's a technology, but then even internet is a technology, right? And I think that the entire digital ecosystem is powered by internet. So saying that, okay, it's just a tool, and I think we shouldn't care about that. I think it's like a slightly outlandish comment, because I think if you think about this, obviously if you don't have internet, none of the digital ecosystem or economy would work. And that is where similarly, I think when we look at blockchain is actually bringing trust to the internet, right? In the sense, like when we look at when internet came to the world, it was more about disseminating this thing. It's about distribution of knowledge, right? But then obviously, I think the trust factor was lacking. Now, what blockchain is as an industry, I think it's about bringing trust to the trust to the internet economy. And I think that is where it becomes very, very important, because like if you think about this, so we are interacting with so many different people, we are exchanging information, we are exchanging financials and so many other transactions that we do over the internet. And that is where a lot of times frauds happen. There are a lot of times where the trust is breached. And that is where blockchain actually can bring that trust to the table. And also, I think obviously the question is with respect to the mass adoption. And I think that is where there are certain industries where I think the adoption by the users or by the organizations would make a lot of sense. I think as we discussed, education is one. I think identity is very crucial, right? Because obviously, as we were saying, that there are more than 1 billion people who don't have any form of identity. There are 3 billion people who don't have a digital presence. So I think if we are able to kind of provide an identity to these people, which is powered by the blockchain, the concepts of decentralization and blockchain, I think in that sense, we would be able to push this industry forward towards mass adoption. So I think it's more than just a tool. That is how I would look at it.
I agree. And so I'd like to share this. Well, I'll share this in a second. But, you know, Ryan, I think your point is about this being about financial transactions. I think you're right? I mean, from my perspective, blockchain is really about the transference of value. And a lot of these applications that we see that people are calling blockchains are just DLTs, right? In fact, I would say 95% of these things that are called blockchains, essentially people are just using the hype to promote their project. And so from that perspective, I would completely agree with you. From the perspective I would completely disagree with you is this. Bitcoin truly is a decentralized blockchain. And to me, this all comes down to the concept of centralized versus decentralized, right? And what makes Bitcoin so incredibly unique is, and powerful, is if you think about in 10 years, it went from 0 to the 6th largest global currency in the world. Now, compared to the US and China and the euro, you know, and yuan, you know, it's still very, very small, but you got to look at the trajectory. And let me share this on my screen. And the reason, so this is the money supply, right? And so if we put everything into perspective, you know, we came off the gold standard in about 1970, right? And then all of a sudden the curve changes until 2008, the curve changes again. And then in February or March of 2020, in a couple months, we add more money to the money supply than we have in 25 years. And so I believe that this technology is really about the movement of value. It's about money, and money impacts literally every transaction. When we talk about lotteries, we're talking about money, right? And you know, you said nobody's really interested in doing this. Well, again, the banks that really didn't want us to pursue this concept of decentralized cryptocurrency told us it was a scam, it was a fad, it wasn't going to last, until the point that they realized that it was growing, and they said, oh, you know what, we're in this. And now there's over 40 banks. In fact, we've got a relationship with the Union of Central Banks, which is 250 banks in North Africa and the Middle East, that are all building blockchain. Well, they're exploring, they're working on blockchain projects, and they're actually looking at competing in this space, because if they don't, the number of wallet downloads, all of those things are starting to increase and expand. And as people become more comfortable with using cryptocurrency in payment systems, then the question is, and especially if you can start, as people build smart contracts and program the money into it, right? We're going to see a place down the road, not today, but we're going to see a place down the road where I can download the digital dollar and I've got it on my phone, but I can also download any other kind of cryptocurrency. And these cryptocurrencies give us capabilities through smart contracts that we've never seen before, right? And that's going to then impact the government in terms of rulemaking and policies and regulators. And so I would agree that by today's standards, it's really nothing to look at. But if you compared the horse to the automobile, right, in the first few years of the automobile didn't actually make sense, right? I mean, if you drove your car out of town and it ran out of gas, right, there was no gas stations, right? Or if it broke down, you know, you'd have to wait a month for a part. Horses were much more reliable, and there, I can imagine there were a lot of people that says, look, why are you wasting your time investing in these things called automobiles? You know, that's a stupid idea. A horse is a lot more reliable. A horse works. It's proven. Why would you want to use a horse? I mean, a car. And that's where I think we are with this technology.
Was a token burn model for how we do asset tokenization, and then a one-to-one currency.
So I go ahead.
This is Heather. How are you?
Great, Heather.
I would like to just bring up a couple of topics that no one's really talked about with regard to gambling and charities. One is just that, let's say this happens with a charitable token. Have we addressed any questions around whether or not, because the way I see this process is they would donate money to the charity, and the charity would have non-fungible tokens that would basically be used to distribute to the charity. But then how does the charity cash out those tokens? How does the charity, and also at what point and who is paying taxes, if any? Because if a portion's going to the brick and mortar of the company, and then the rest of it, the 50%, is going to a charitable organization, they're exempt. So how are we looking at addressing the tax liabilities?
I can answer some of that for you, Heather. For one thing, every jurisdiction is different in regards to how they tax. Now, the charity is responsible in the event of a raffle to collect federal taxes above a certain prize. On a local level, you have different aspects of the marketplace where manufacturers and distributors are licensed by the state to participate in the gaming markets there. And those licensing fees vary. So one of the biggest licensing, obviously, out of New Jersey and Nevada, but there's a distinction between gambling and charitable gaming. For instance, here in New Hampshire, gambling is illegal, but charitable gaming is permitted. And in order to participate, you have to comply with a variety of different rules for a variety of different games. So to the point of your question, it's really a case-by-case basis on jurisdiction. Some states, they'll leave it up to the county sheriff to decide whether they'll let an operation continue or not. But now in the model that we showed you, there's no tokenization involved there. It's used to collect the data, share the data, and the actual game itself is just a special bit of intellectual property that we put together. But when we set out to address regulatory matters and taxes and licensing, most states, they collect that from a variety of different ways. Now, ultimately, tokenization is a wonderful place to get to, and I think the panelists can speak towards tokenization in the long run. Right. But charitable gaming, yes, quite different from gambling itself.
I have a point. I'm not sure if any of you guys are developers, but I've developed multiple Ethereum casino games. And I think one of the possibilities, I don't think charity gaming is going to be a big thing, because the real aspect is this. I shared in the group chat, Pulled Together. It's a no-loss lottery system, and it's a protocol. Anyone can set up their own casino lottery game, and you would be able to pool liquidity from almost everywhere in the world just because you're using a blockchain. So I could be a person in Nigeria or somewhere in New Delhi, India, with no capital at all, but if I have access to internet and I can launch a protocol, then suddenly I have global funding for my game.
Now, this is an unregulated game. This is an uncertified game that you're speaking about, right? So now you're crossing borders, and the laws change as you cross those borders. And charitable gaming is in the US and it's worldwide, but we have these puritanical roots, right? Everybody, to game, it used to be just the natives were permitted. And then we've allowed charitable gaming to develop. And then we have lotteries that have developed for the public good, for education and other works that were traditionally taxed. I don't think charitable gaming is going to go anywhere in the near future. And that's the issue, is that we see the need to embolden it. It's very important that we help charitable gaming compete with all the new emerging mobile games. This is the one place where, if you're going to gamble and play, that it connects to multiple stakeholders within the community. And in a way that is already being utilized around the US to fund these public works where there isn't enough say. So I surely hope and will continue to work to make sure that charitable gaming has a larger place in the market, because it's absolutely needed and justified. And it's something that's already regulated, long been regulated. So that's the beautiful thing. You hate to have to go and change the law or write the law. If the law is there and it's old, we like to find ways to work with it. But at the same time, we're in a position where we have to direct legislators. We have to make them move with the times. If you look at the raffle laws in the state of New Hampshire, it's about 3 paragraphs. 16-year-olds can buy tickets, and you don't have to pay any licensing fees for a raffle if you're a nonprofit. But now, if I want to do bingo and I'm a charity, I've got to pay the state of New Hampshire a few $1,000 and go through a rigmarole to bingo. Bingo is a dying game. But the other piece to this, I see, you know, there's the private gambling side, right? And I want to just kind of nod to Gideon on this. We know that if you are operating private casinos and such, and you're doing good for the community and helping out the community, that builds your bottom line. I surely hope charitable gaming isn't going.
I have a question though. The charitable gaming, who allows, there's no governance in any of these charities. Governance in the sense of, okay, your charity goes to healthcare or maybe autism, this or that. However, it's still a board at the charity or company that gets to decide. Just because I play the game, I don't get to decide where any of the charity winnings go to. If you did it in a tokenized contract, they can give you a governance token and you can vote on where the funds actually deploy. And it's way more accountable than any legislator or board of directors.
Of course, and that's the mission, is to educate them on that fact.
I agree to that, but that would probably be phase 2, where you can actually, when you donate, when we have multiple raffles running for multiple foundations, when you place a donation, you can vote on where you believe that donation needs to go. That would be phase 2, when we're running multiple charitable games in probably multiple jurisdictions. I agree with you 100% on that. But first, we got to get the regulators on board. First, we got to get one charitable organization up and running on a blockchain in order to enhance the voting rights and all this kind of stuff, all these great stuff that you guys are coming up with.
Well,
Hey, Tarasu, I want to just, it's 2:43 right now. So we're gonna have to wrap it up in about the next 15 minutes or so. So do you want to see if anybody has any closing comments, and then talk about kind of what's next? Because my understanding is you're going to do some private GBA meetings, working group meetings, but also some public meetings, and just kind of talk through about what your plans are and how people can potentially get involved with you in the working group.
Right, and after listening to everybody's introduction, I wanted to definitely retool my this outline here that I could share with you, or if it is.
Oh, here, let me stop sharing. And I'm going to drop into the chat right now a URL. And when we're done with this and the video is processed, I'm going to take the video from this meeting and the chat, and I'm going to put it at this link, so that you'll be able to see, be able to get minutes and videos and records of the meetings from this group.
Okay.
So, but it'll be available probably about 20 or 30 minutes after we conclude the event today.
All right. So just, and to cover kind of there, I noticed a couple questions too. One thing is Ryan, you asked, why wouldn't people just, you know, donate money? When it comes to gaming, you know, people who have the money to donate generally don't. People with money don't donate their money, but they will donate their time. Whereas people who have less money are more likely to gamble or to play games or to participate in the lottery. And those also tend to be donors, you know, that it's this donor environment of how people are. But then to the charitable gaming strategy, okay? When you look at who is authorized to game today in the United States through charitable gaming, you've got veteran service organizations, churches, religious organizations, political parties, right? Lots of nonprofits. And in the state of New Hampshire, even just an agent for a nonprofit or somebody who wants to do it for a nonprofit can do it. They don't even really need anything to do it. That's why we like lottery or raffle. It's an old game. It needs help. In the future, this has just been an introduction to charitable gaming and how it connects with GBA work groups and potentially what we could do with it leading up to Blockchain Week. We have a working model with a charity through the Marines. We'd like to consider how we could expand a charitable organization outside the GBA gaming group for the GBA itself. And then in the next discussion, we can delve into the actual tools and applications that are actively being used in the marketplace and what is actually out there, and in what regulatory spaces do those exist, and at the same time identify our own regulatory space, perhaps Washington, D.C., Maryland, very friendly to raffle. Following that, we're just thinking of leading up into Blockchain Week, if we could discuss authenticating CSR, gaming, and tokenization of the corporate responsibility, because it is a transaction. You're thinking about finance, but we're thinking about the non-financial aspects of tokenization and how it builds loyalty and actually quantify that CSR. Leading into maybe how can we get this charitable foundation organized and develop a model for philanthropy and education and charitable gaming. Education K through 12 being specifically, I would suggest, because that's where the lottery space lives. And then of course, pulling together a beta model, maybe based upon some of the work we've done with the Marine Corps League, where we've given the donors the ability to direct their contribution. And then show where that all is in an open forum. And then talk about lottery and education, solving the accountability with blockchain applications. We mentioned one application for learners, and I mentioned another application for assessment that we are working toward and would like to engender more support. And then finally, leading into Blockchain Week, if we have our little I skipped our charitable game beta. If we come up with that beta raffle though, maybe do a raffle internally within ourselves, and then come out during Blockchain Week, the GBA gaming group and all of those of you here who are joining, I do hope, that we come out and explain blockchain gaming regulation and its social impact, as we will have demonstrated for January, February, March, and through the week of blockchain. I feel like when you mentioned the Earth ID or the ID management, you know, it's almost like each of us as a member should have an ID. I think about an organization like my Marine Corps Association. We should all have an ID. Every user, every donor should have that ID. And that is a nice segue into that governmental and regulated space. Every student can have that ID. And there's just multiple doorways where you can get into to grab it. And then my final thought, just to leadership. There's so much voting that goes on in the Marine Corps League and the VFW connection. The VFWs and the American Legions, these have a 98% voter turnout, folks. These are the voters in this country, of the little amount of people who vote. These folks turn out. And I look at my son who's 14, and in no time he's going to be a voter. Can we educate them in 4 years? K through 12 students and the local communities on localizing their lottery over the next 4 years, and teach people about true, authentic, transparent, and accountable governance? I think we could. It's not pie in the sky. It's more like we've got some strategies here that we could implement. It doesn't have to be across the board. All you have to do is have a success somewhere and set the tone. I think the Marine Corps League is a good place to look at of how and what we've done with peer blockchain as help in putting these transactions online. I'd like to see us try to pull something together for the DBA.
This is Heather again. So I love everything that you just said, and I think that governance is definitely something that needs to be addressed. The K through 12 system already teaches digital citizenship. Teaching them about digital citizenship and digital identity is a very important process, and is part of is a component to the curriculum that could be added. But I'm still missing something. Where is anything on the blockchain? Because in order to put something on a blockchain, you need to have a mined verified transaction. So where's the gas money coming from to do that? What chains are we talking about? I mean, everything is very theoretical as far as an idea, but no one seems to want to talk about actual cryptocurrency or mining and how that's done and how anything is actually put on a blockchain.
Heather, can I share with you something that I'm really excited about?
Actually, hey, Heather, if you're really curious, look at my screen. This is a farm right now I'm at.
Oh, sweet. Whoa, where'd it go? Yeah, no, that's amazing. But we're starting to have issues where all of those components are made in China. Now we're having problems with you know, our trade developments with China and equipment and being able to scale networks. And it can very easily trip up any of the stuff that we've been envisioning.
Heather,
And no one talks about
Heather,
yeah.
listen, I want to share something with you. This is not ready for prime time. We're not releasing it out to the general public yet. But what you're looking at, and right now this is our monitor. We just connected the first 3 nodes, but our goal is to get hundreds of nodes, potentially thousands of nodes all around the world. This is the government business blockchain platform. And
so this is an AWS platform, though, right?
No, it can be on AWS. It can launch on Raspberry Pis. We're building the installation scripts so that people can run it on any platform, but it'll run on a Raspberry Pi. In fact, Alex, who just dropped off, was kind enough to donate a substantial amount of funds to fund Raspberry Pi so that anybody in the world that wanted to run a GBA node could run a node. And the idea is that this is a multi-blockchain platform that allows information and assets to move across blocks. So if somebody has a blockchain solution built on EOS or Ethereum or Corda or any, we're building gateways to all the different blockchains so that it allows interoperability for applications that serve government purposes like licensing, permitting, lottery, all this stuff. And this is stuff we're working on the back end, right? Again, it's not ready for us to go prime time. We said it's running on Besu, right? So we got the gas price set at 0. We're working through all the tokenomics of everything like that. This is something that our mining and cryptocurrency working group is working on. But we're building out the infrastructure to allow governments to build blockchain-based solutions with tokens. And so we got the legal and the regulatory pieces all being worked on, you know, the MSPs and stuff. We're building on here a voting token, a utility token, and this is connecting with the GBA Distributed Autonomous Organization Working Group to build decision models. So all of this stuff you guys are talking about, right? We're actually building the systems on the back end, and when they're ready, we'll come forward with them. But I completely agree with everything you said. But it just takes a lot of work to get to the point where we stop talking theory and we actually can put stuff into production. And by the way, all of this is being done globally by volunteers.
I know.
Is that not crazy? I mean, literally,
for years now.
for years. Well, look, it's longer, it's slower, right? But the bottom line is this is essentially truly a decentralized entity organization. And this is going to be the very first government application that will be deployed globally, that no single government will own or operate, but they can all use. So instead of every county, every government in the world building their own licensing and permitting applications and systems, right? People can build them on this platform and allow all the governments to use them, right? And we've got to build sort of the economic models and incentives. We're working that in, right? But instead of every government in the world duplicating the exact same business processes, right, for voting or all of these things, we're going to create an ecosystem that will allow interoperability. So as an example, if I'm a minority business and I want to register, I may have to register 8 different times with one government agency, and then I got to do the same thing for Virginia, Maryland, DC, and if I want to go work for different agencies within those departments. So we're looking at building single on-ramps to interact with government so that you don't have to duplicate that in every single jurisdiction. Now, it's a lot of work. We're not, you know, so to Ryan's point, you know, yeah, everybody's talking about, you know, pie in the sky stuff. Well, we're not ready to roll this out yet, so we're not publicizing, but we are working and building on all of those things to make all of this a reality. Oh gosh, the governance, it's incredible.
So thank you for showing us that. Like, that tells me you guys are doing a lot of the discussion work behind the scenes, which is awesome. But the people who are talking about going onto a blockchain still haven't seemed to understand that there is a cryptocurrency aspect to it. and I'm still not seeing where they actually plan to put their like what they're trying to do with the blockchain, other than just be on it and have transparency.
So Heather, I can answer that very quickly, and we didn't have time to get into that today, but it's quite a specific area. So with a raffle, with an online raffle as a key focus, we are zoning in on the random number generator aspect, because that's the area we feel needs to be, I suppose, ring-fenced from a transparency perspective. So we are replacing a traditional centralized RNG with a decentralized RNG, and the decentralized RNG runs on a blockchain. Okay, and then secondly, in terms of the tokenization, which you mentioned, you're right. There is obviously a token, and it's not a cryptocurrency. It's a token that's running through the raffle platform. Now, the way we've set it up for the New Hampshire Marine platform, we have effectively used a token with no value that's running in parallel through the blockchain platform to ensure that all of the data is captured on the blockchain, but none of the financial transactions are running through the blockchain, because like you said, we don't want to necessarily start triggering tax liabilities or financial responsibilities for different parties. What we do want to do is track the actual data through the blockchain using a token, and that's what we're doing there. So both of those activities are being used specifically to address, you know, the gaps that we see in the charitable raffle space when it comes to abuse of the end user, abuse of funds, and the lack of tools that the regulator can use. So if you then step back and you're a regulator, what can you see with a charitable raffle? You can see three different things.
Hey, Owen, I got to interrupt, and I apologize. It's 2:58, and I literally have to use this bridge for another call in 2 minutes. So what I'm going to say is, if you're interested in participating in this effort, and you want to get in touch with Tara Sue, if you go to gbaglobal.org, right, and on the main menu where it says associations, go down to working groups, then go down to gaming. You'll see her information. Go ahead and reach out to her, and then Tara Sue, will you? You're going to do another meeting like this again next month, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that'll be on the GBA calendar. We'll get that posted sometime soon. So you go to gbaglobal.org under events, view all events, and we'll be posting that next event pretty soon. But I got to wrap it up, and I want to thank the gaming working group and all the work that they've done, and everybody who participated. You guys are just awesome, and I just can't wait to see where this thing's going to go. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Gerard, and everyone. It's our pleasure.